of how a talent would make a difference. The GTCI model, the Global Talent Competitiveness Index, is trying to, on an endeavor to support this kind of visibility and to give you a picture. So let's have a look at what the components are. The focus that we will be discussing today will be the focus on three main emerging markets. So today is about emerging markets and what's happening with the emerging markets. Many failures, some successes, but what's interesting are the teams that fail. A very interesting type of observation there. If you have a team that was able to hit success once, but then is on a route to failure, and another team is having or encountering a similar type of failure, we are still failing as a community to co-create. And so we see a lot of companies that could actually be recycled into the ecosystem in bringing people together. And that's the collaborative part after bringing people to connect. So here we are connecting, we're still not yet collaborating. And the co-creation space is rather more at the end of that line, where two teams who collaborated may be bringing something new to the table. So actually failure is not that bad if you were able to build a strong team that failed. It's kind of like if the ship sank and the team was able to get back to anchor, they can we need to actually encourage failure and celebrate it even sometimes. Between MENA, Sub-Saharan Africa and emerging Europe, there are certain patterns that may be a little bit similar. The income patterns around the countries are not very similar, but they are similarly categorized. Unemployment rates in these countries are also a little bit differentiated. Sub-Saharan Africa is having the highest sort of like income issues, and we can also see that the labor market is a little bit having some issues, but it's on the rise. And the same thing is also in MENA around talent. It's also on the rise, and so also in the eastern part of Europe. And let's see the picture for that kind of change. So here you see among some of the countries that the study was focusing on, and you could see more or less Ukraine being the median average that we have in terms of scoring at 40. We could see that Egypt, Kenya, Morocco, Nigeria are a little bit lagging behind amongst the emerging countries. But the good thing and the promising thing is that if we actually get into the vocational training elements and we get into the global knowledge elements, the picture actually changes from the picture that you're seeing here. If you can move to the other slide, please, we'd see actually here some of the strengths that start appearing when we talk about VTs and GKs, the vocational training and vocational and technical skills, as well as the other skills. And we change the branding of it and the naming of it. So instead of VT, we're calling them digital skills. Digital skills and high-level skills. These are sort of like the yin and yangs in the personalities of talent, the technical element and the leadership element in it. And so if we look at the picture again, we'd see that quite in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, as well as Egypt, in that cluster is having quite a dynamic kind of rise around these elements. This is an opportunity that we actually must bank on, because the future is a knowledge-powered economy. And the more we are knowledge power our youth, the more opportunities we would be capturing and the more deal flow we would be having into those countries that invest into the youth. Strong ecosystems that are currently being built in the various countries here. You could also see, for example, Turkey is lacking a little bit behind, other than the more or less imagery that we can have. South Africa also similarly. When we're looking at those two countries, they used to be quite talent pulling. Apologies. And currently we can see that there was a bit of a drop around here. Also, more or less very important is the integration of Morocco into the Arabian ecosystem, where you start seeing how ecosystems interact and similarities around their youth layers and how their youth are actually educated. Move to the next one, please. Would be a little bit more around how talent is interacting locally and how we can do the connection, the collaboration, and how we can collect, collaborate, and co-create using our biggest asset. Our biggest asset is and remains always human capital. And human capital is the reason why we rotate around each other with deal flow and trade. And so the youth bulge that we are experiencing specifically for those emerging markets that we showed you today, 50% is under 25 years. This is actually quite a mining industry, mining for talent. But what use is a raw diamond if you don't have the factory to really polish it? So it's a polishing exercise really in the regions, whether it belongs to sub-Saharan Africa, the MENA region, or the emerging Europe part. Similarly, huge talent potentials are discoverable there, but it requires various stakeholders to seriously collaborate together, and that means government with the private sector. And we all know that public-private partnerships are not the easiest to handle, because a two-way deal is always easier than a three-way triangular deal where more and more people start collaborating, the interests start varying, and the interests could actually sometimes collide. So practically speaking, tolerance is a very important aspect of the future of trade in how people would need to a little bit more self-negotiate rather than the consistent competitiveness at every deal. And that's more or less for the governments to observe around how to push their agendas around youth development versus maintaining the economics without the scale. High-value talent ecosystems are majorly driven by inclusivity, and inclusivity that means, number one, gender equality at the workplace, the respect for other humans and other capabilities, the introduction of differentiated type of talent as the future is seeking a differentiated type of talent. The best guy at math today is not necessarily the best next to the machine tomorrow, and so we are looking for a differentiated type of creativity of the future. That said, I would like to give you a sort of an intro into some of the elements that governments and private sectors may want to consider that came out of this report. So I'll present you with the recommendations. The policy recommendations for today would be more or less for governments to improve the landscape. That's a very tough job, and it would be very unfair to leave it just with the government. But also regulators need to also be proactively engaged and building that ecosystem around talent. And this is what we are actually seeing across the MENA region. We're seeing this also in certain pockets in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's already existing in the emerging Europe part. Funding of skills is also important. It's a longer investment cycle, but the investment cycle into programs is specifically very important and very flourishing around the reward of it. But instead of a normal company entry and exit that takes about 5 to 7 years, maybe this is a 15-year kind of journey. So the investment cycle is different, but the funding will definitely yield success at the youth level. City authorities as well must develop a more connected cluster. That means also the cities need to start interacting. Today it might be Egypt and Saudi and UAE. Tomorrow it might be Cairo, Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. Yeah? So cities and the thinking of cities is starting to change, and internally within the country cities will start behaving differently. That brings in also the opportunity to create sector-specific focused hubs and ecosystems, as well as also on the business side of things and the private sector, also the pursuing of inclusivity around the rules and regulations of the workplace, how people work and how people actually do conduct business on a daily basis. Happiness is one of the biggest ticket items that the youth are looking for. Their definition of happiness is different than the definition that other generations like Generation X or even the millennials now are discovering. Post-millennials are coming on the rise and are currently exiting their schools and going into universities, so a new wave of youth is going to come upcoming in the coming 2 years that we're going to start discovering, and also new ways of working. I'm one of the people who skipped on something like Snapchat, so I never really joined it, so I don't know how it works. But I know that if I don't know that, I probably don't know many other things, and that is rather more or less my issue. But the world is going where the youth is going, and it's up to us to encourage them and giving them the lead rather than hanging to the old world. Also, on the private business is to promote the IT skills. IT skills are easy to obtain. It's the speediest, most encourageable investment in training is to train your youth on IT skills, because the interactions between human and machine will happen anyways on a different shape and form. I'm not talking science fiction here, I'm talking about interactions between inputs and outputs into a machine, very simple way. And these inputs and outputs do support the communication and the endeavors between humans for trade, and hence people who are not going to be able to have a tight grip on their IT skills will unfortunately not be able to pursue their creative labor force to an extent that is communicatable. With that, I thank you very much for listening today, and I would hand it over to Rasha, who's going to take us further into the panel. Thank you very much.
Testing, can you hear me? Yeah? Mustafa, thank you for a brilliant presentation. Your Excellencies, thank you for showing up. And to the audience, thank you so much for coming. I understand that this is the last panel session for the day, so to see such a huge turnout, truly inspiring, and it really makes us keep doing what we're doing. My name is Rasha. I work on Google's Government Affairs and Public Policy team, and I will be moderating the session today. Unfortunately, we had to start a bit late, and I know from the audience that there are many, many questions you would like to ask the panelists. So I'll try to keep it as short as possible and then give you the floor to ask questions. So before we start, let me introduce our panelists. We'll start with Mustafa, Mr. Mustafa Muharram. He's the CEO of Muharram and Partners. They do public policy and strategic communications, and they're based in Cairo. Martin, my colleague, Martin Ruske, he works on Google's Government Affairs and Public Policy team, covering the Middle East and North Africa region. Mr. Ahmed Daher, he's the, I feel like my voice is coming and going. Are you hearing me well? It's fine? Great. Mr. Ahmed Daher is the advisor to the Minister of Education in Egypt. Ms. Noura Abu Saud, she's the CEO of Education for Employment in Egypt. Also very relevant to what Mustafa was discussing. And Farah Al-Adra, she works in the Arab Youth Council, and she will talk to us more about what they do. They're based in the UAE as well. And last but not least, you all met him, you all know him, Mustafa Khater. He used to be the head of the Alumni Association for INSEAD, and now he's the director of the Greek campus in Cairo. So my first question, always the hardest question, is to Ahmed, representing the Ministry of Education. So Mustafa shared with us a lot of insights about competitiveness and talent attraction. And education is a key pillar in talent, in building talent. So can you tell us more about the reforms that the Ministry of Education in Egypt has been doing? We had a conversation earlier, and you told me about the wonderful stuff that the ministry is doing. So can you please share with the audience more about that?
Yeah, thank you for that, Rasha. And I would like to thank the World Youth Forum for inviting us among friends here. And translators at the back, I'm sorry, I'll switch in Arabic, and please follow with me. Okay. I'll be hard. I'll mix it up, okay? الحقيقة لما بيبقى الواحد
Actually, when I'm sitting in front of my minister, I become very nervous. I become very nervous, so I'm trying to keep up with my speech. 2 years ago, I was not a member of the ministry. I was still a university student.
Mixing وقف الترجمة.
I was working on research related to a program, education program, that engulfs the gap between education outputs and the labor market, and this was a significant research in this period on how to use technology and to educate, to qualify the young men from school to labor market, because majority of people were not familiar with the labor market requirements. So my director gave me the green light with Dr. Tariq, the Ministry of Education. So I had a meeting with Dr. Tariq, the Minister of Education, and he was very enthusiastic to my program. He was explaining a very enormous project, a clear-cut vision and an implementation on the ground for this vision. And instead of explaining or presenting my project, I was being investigated if I have the proper qualification and knowledge, and they told me that I should join the team. And when I had delved into the vision that Egypt started 4 years ago and was implemented on the ground, I thought this was an honor for me to be part of the team, being in a reform process. Returning back to your question, I did not present my project to Dr. Tariq. So far I've forgotten this project, and I had another major one, which is the education, changing the educational mindset in Egypt. Russia, the anchor, said that
مصر قد قامت بعمل إصلاحات في الواقع هي ليست إصلاحات ولكنه نوع من أنواع التحول، لأن الإصلاح معناه أن هناك شيء ليس على ما يرام، ولكن التغيير هو برنامج قد تكون الناس سمعت عنه، قد تكون سمع عنه البعض، وهو Education 2.2. وقد ساعدتنا الوكالات في وضع
يقدر يتعامل مع القرن ال21 ومهارات القرن ال21. دايما أي وظيفة بتبقى محتاجة مجموعة behavior و knowledge و skills والايكونومي دايناميك، وذيس داينامكس بتحتم علينا ان احنا نغير دايما في ازاي ان احنا بنعلم اطفالنا واولادنا في مراحل المختلفه.
in various learning phases from before university until postgraduate studies. We had the challenge to start year by year to add new curriculums, new frameworks that is putting into consideration the core proficiencies that's needed in the 21st century. Yes, last year we had started by the kindergarten and first primary, and we have added second primary, and we are speeding in order to add more years that to benefit more students. Now 6 million students are benefiting from the new and from the upgraded educational systems that will help him build his character and how to be innovative and creative, and this is one of the pillars that we are basing our education policy on it. The other part that the exit of students from the high school, that we insist that no one drops out of the educational system without having a certificate that is a piece of paper that does not mean anything. So we had to change the evaluation processes and give the outcomes of education through evaluation systems that we have started implementing last year. This is a transformation trip, and every transformation is related to people, policies, and sustainability. If we look for the axis of transformation, it's human being, and our care for these values had prompted us to entrench these values in our transformation process. Last year we have added, as we did with the kindergarten and the first years of education, we were able to make a breakthrough in the first year of high school, and we changed the evaluation processes and have put technology in it that can give a value for students by which they can learn and be happy to be learning and be happy to be in school. Of course, there are resistance and impediments. We are working on them and we are overcoming them. The excitement point, it's not excitement as much as an adventure. We are trying to take a break from the adventures we are witnessing in our daily work. I have a lot of ideas that can take another hour.
chance to talk, so you spoke exactly according to the time given. We'll move back to English because I think the translator's capacity is easier in English. Mustafa, are you happy with that? I'm coming for you for the next question. Okay. Okay. So my next question is for you, Mustafa. So Ahmed spoke about the reform, or actually he corrected me, not the reform, the complete transformation of the Ministry of Education. I would like to know more from you about the Egyptian case. So Mustafa earlier shared with us policy recommendations on a regional level. Can you give us some more Egypt-specific recommendations that you can share with the attendees today? And how do you see that fitting in improving the competitiveness of the country?
Thank you, Ashra. Talking about Egypt, the situation in Egypt is quite a difficult proposition, but we'll be trying to be as honest and straightforward as possible, which is actually very important. That's why I would like to speak in Arabic. We have His Excellency as representative of the cabinet, and of course many of the decision makers, and I think we owe them basically being honest and straightforward and talking about the real thing that would matter in this report for decision making. مرة تانية أنا يمكن سعيد بوجودي في منتدى شباب العالم.
It is my pleasure to be attending the third edition of the World Youth Forum and to be one of the speakers in this panel discussion. It's our utmost pleasure with the presence of Dr. Tariq Shawki, the Minister of Education, also the efforts by Ambassador Mushira Khattab, and I have also the pleasure to be attending with her in this and the efforts of the National Council for Motherhood and Childhood, and also the engineer Hala Al-Gohari, chairman of ETID. Actually, these forums would be very much important, because it's part of our job would be the channels of diplomacy to approach diplomatic means. But once we're on the podium, I guess we need to be more or less relevant to the case that we're discussing. Being an Egyptian before and being an advisor to multiple enterprises like Google or ICT firms, when I've delved into the talent competitiveness report, there have been some questions that Egypt and 96 countries within the report. And when I began reading the data and this information, I've also begun to consider other elements, and with the presence with the Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the recent African summit, that although Egypt, a country like Egypt, has invested much money in infrastructure, considerable amounts in infrastructure, and also legislative structure, in a more considerable way, we have not managed to attract foreign investments, enough foreign investments. His Excellency began to tackle the issue of investment, and I know this applies to the talent competitiveness in this case. It's not about abstract concepts or indices or mere statistics or figures. There are tangible implications on our lifestyle in Egypt, and also the opportunities to be offered for the youth and the future of Egypt. When talking about talent competitiveness, we're addressing the future of the administrative sector in Egypt and administrative and government reform in Egypt. We're talking about the capacity of the Egyptian economy to compete whether regionally or internationally. We're also talking about real opportunities for the youth to express their potent energies, ideas in order to reach a better life in a very significant way. All these factors raise the questions, raise the fact that inspired the efforts that no one can deny that have been undertaken during the last period by the government and also the Minister of Education, which have been noted by Engineer Ahmed in his contribution. But the big question: why are we the 96th rank in this report? This requires requires some reconsidering our programs and to the limitations, our limitations, and things that we can upgrade in order to optimize the standards. I'm not talking about the index; it's just a figure, but I believe that the elements behind that, the index, is what matter. It has the real impact, the real impact with the youth. Without further ado, I need to answer the first question, but maybe I believe that there are certain elements, certain factors that we need to consider together, like the legislative environment, the regulatory environment, let's say IT sector. And it's the field of the specialty of engineer Hala, the head of ETID. It's some sort of a dialogue between the private sector and the government relating to technology-related policies. Technology is the drive force for the presentation earlier. It's our capacity to devise policies, enact laws and regulations that would enable technology and technology users, and would also enable enterprises to work under this technology and also to flourish in Egypt. This is a very huge potential. When talking about government policies in the private sector, we're talking about the messages of encouraging the use of technology and also the competitive startups and etc. And we'll also find laws to impose taxes on the e-commerce sector. This would create somehow confusion, being paradoxical. We're talking about the restrictions and limitations upon enterprises working in data and some of that sort. This is a very important factor that we need to consider when working the capacity of the government, the overall capacity of the government, and devising policy frameworks for the IT technology. This is the headline. This is the theme that we need to consider when working in this field. The second part I would like to note is related to local development policies. It's no use to raise the slogan that the young men, that you should initiate a startup, and then I leave them a prey for bureaucratic procedures and bureaucracy. It's useless. Because by the end of the day, they would fail. They would not reach self-fulfillment. I would not be able to nurture him, to maintain these talents from brain drain. I believe this is another headline, which is local development policies. This is a very topic to pursue in the future. Maybe the index we're tackling focuses on the idea of cities in Egypt and a country like Egypt. There are three main categories focusing on talent competitiveness, whether in the factors of demographic and geographic factors. They need this kind of talent to survive. Or other big countries like the USA, they need these talents because they need to pull migrants. The third category, which is the emerging market like Egypt, in this report, they need talent competitiveness in order to improve and upgrade the infrastructure, to give an impetus to the economy and other factors of life standards. I'm fully aware that there are certain limitations upon the government to consider. We're not a very rich country. We might be in shortage of the resources to invest in certain sectors, but one main message that if the government decided to focus in a certain city, a certain town, in order to transform it into a city parallel to Dubai, Mountain View in California, this would create a hub that we need it for across the country. But if we need to start a new business incubator, we might head for the new administrative capital. This falls under the integration of policies and legislations. I would not to be somehow redundant. I'm going to finish my word. I'm very optimistic about the future. It's going to be prosperous for Egypt and the whole region. the broad lines for the policies and legislations exist, and people in charge are very competent in this field. I can claim this of experts and competent people, but it's about the details. In the next era, Egypt needs that quantum leap that would only be achieved when we pay attention to the details, the overall cycle, the whole ecosystem, not just the broad headlines. Thank you. Thank you very much.
شكرا مصطفى. لقد أخذت أكثر من الوقت المتاح لك. أريد الآن أن أنتقل إلى زميلي من
the whole report centers around the concept of digital skills. Why, in Google's opinion, is digital skills important in boosting a country's competitiveness ability?
Thank you, Rasha. And thanks for the organizers, and thank you for all for coming to this last session of the day. Digital skills are very important because the digital economy is where the future is for not just developed economies, but also for emerging markets. If you think of all your traditional industries, we're trying to preserve and grow them, but there is that part called the digital economy, which is growing much faster than the rest of the economy. And that's where the jobs of the future are. That's where our children and grandchildren will be working to a large extent. And so these, the skills required to really benefit from that expansion of the digital economy are critical. Now, there is a mismatch, and I think the report shows this quite clearly, between where the leading economies of the world are in terms of being able to attract, grow, and develop talent, and where emerging markets are trying to get to as they catch up. And the same is reflected in the size of the relative size of the digital economies of different markets. If you think of places like Korea, USA, Ireland, countries that are known to have a very strong digital economy, that economy makes up about 8 to 12% of the overall GDP. In emerging markets, Africa, Middle East, North Africa, Egypt, we're talking about 0.5 to 4% of GDP. So you can see that there's a, even just to get to the point where the developed markets are, there is a big growth still to be done. Now, Google has expanded its presence in Egypt and across MENA because we think that there is a huge opportunity here. And one of these data points came out in the report, and Mustafa, from what you've been saying about the depth of the talent pool and some of the sort of basic skill levels and creativity and entrepreneurship and other traits that exist here. We think that this is a place that can only go up and that can grow dramatically if investments are made in the right places. And I think, Mustafa, you spoke to it, whether it's at the city level or, Ahmed, if you focus on particular grades within the education system, those are sort of surgical areas where you can insert digital skills throughout. And if we do this right, it's not a quick fix, right? We all know reform takes a long time, and it's probably a generational issue. But we are now at a watershed moment globally. This year is the first year where as many people are online as are offline. So we're at this 50-50 moment globally, where 50% of the world is online now. And obviously that percentage is going to continue to grow. So taking advantage of that growth and getting the right skills for the future is very important.
Thank you, Martin. See, Mustafa? He stuck to the time. Okay, so now we move to the other side.
I'm worried already from the time.
Actually, we're still good. So I would like to introduce you to Noura Abu Saoud. She is the CEO of Education for Employment. And I think for many of the young crowd here, what she does really would resonate. And I want to invite her to talk more about what they do and to give us more of a regional outlook. We were focused a bit more in the first half of the questions on Egypt. I would like to hear from Noura more on How does the region look like? What is your activities as education for employment across the region? And how do you help young people who want to learn skills that actually help them in finding a job?
Thank you so much, Rasha, and I will try to be on time as much as possible. So, and I would like to thank the panelists as well for everything that they've said, because they justify why do we exist. So this is what we do in simple words. So we are Education for Employment in Arabic, مؤسسة التعليم من أجل التوظيف, and we're known for a short name which is EFE Egypt. Who we are? We are an Egyptian NGO registered with the Ministry of Social Solidarity since 2008. So it's been 11 years now since we are operating in Egypt. What do? We simply, as Mr. Ahmed said, we bridge the gap, and I'm stealing your words because this is really what we do. We bridge the gap between the educational system and the labor market. So we train and then we place into jobs. We are not a training center. We don't focus only on training, as Mustafa said, the importance of the human capital and training and working on the human skills. We do that and then we place the students into job, and we measure our success by our employment rate. So since inception, we have an employment rate of 81%. Not just do we measure the employment rate, but we also measure the retention rate, where we keep on following up with the students for a period of 1 year. We call them on a quarterly basis. So our retention rate is 78% of the 81%, which means that 78% are able to remain employed for a period of a year. Not just that, but we're very proud to say that 52% of our graduates are females. So we put a lot of effort in women empowerment. How do we do that? We do that, we are market driven, and we call ourselves tailors of curricula. So we start from the labor market to assess their needs and to see their vacancy, and we mainly target entry-level jobs, and then we tailor the curricula, and then we implement the programs, and we place them into jobs. Although we are lucky to be an Egyptian NGO, yet I am very happy to announce here that we are a part of a network of affiliates in the MENA region. So we do exist in 7 countries in the MENA region. We exist in Morocco, Tunisia, Saudi, Palestine. It was the first time for Farah to know that we do exist in the UAE as well, and Jordan and Egypt. So we all share the same vision and mission, yet everyone is independent and carries the nationality of her country. Our headquarters are in the States, in Washington and New York. We have another global office in Spain in Europe, and another global office in the UAE. So the mission of the global offices is to support us, whether with employers or donors. And on the mission of the affiliates is, to operate in the Middle East and North Africa. I don't want to forget to thank Google very much for inviting us here and making us come in this big forum, and definitely thank everybody in the organizers and the forum itself, because we just came last minute. And Google is one of our biggest donors. We are training 1,500 students for a period of a year and then placing them into jobs. And we are mainly focusing on the digital marketing and Maharat in Google, and it's such a great success. What I would like to say here is that as an NGO, we definitely face challenges as we go along. And as Mustafa said, and you mentioned a lot about connecting but not collaborating, and we've heard the word ecosystem several times. And I really liked when you said to co-create together. And this is exactly what we need to do as a society. If we can succeed to work within the golden triangle of having the government and the public sector as well as the civil society all together, working all together hand in hand and co-creating together, this is the equation of success. Why am I saying this, and why am I stressing on this? Because as an NGO, especially in Egypt, we put a lot of effort to find donors. And when we do that, we put a lot of effort to find youth to be trained and to make the donors happy for spending their money. And when we do that, we put a lot of effort to find employers to place these students later into jobs and to make them employable. So if we can work all together, and this is the benefit of such a great conference, if we can network and bring all together on the same table to work hand in hand, then this is going to save us a lot of time and a lot of effort. Because we have worked individually on getting collaborations and partnerships with universities. And we succeeded in partnering with 11 universities up till now. However, to be very honest, Your Excellency, we put a lot of effort to do that, and we have to present who we are and what we do and go through a lot of legal issues to make sure that we are credible to train the graduates from universities and high institute. So if we're able to do that, I mean, Helwan University is one of our biggest university where we've trained around 1,000 students up till now. If we can do that, that would be great. Again, the other side of the coin, which is the employer side and the private sector. We invest a lot of time to let employers know who we are and what we do and how we can benefit them in placing students in their organizations and factories and jobs, because they spend a lot of time from announcing for a vacancy and then receiving all the CVs and then screening the CVs and then shortlisting the CVs and then sitting for the first interview and then the second interview. We summarize all of this. We just look for the vacancy and we get them the right candidate that fits the same vacancy. So we even spare the employers a lot of time and effort. So if we can bring all that together, again, what we do is we target two groups of people, the university graduates and the university students themselves. So we have two types of programs. The first one, which is the university graduate program, we target year 3 and 4. We give them CV writing skills and interview skills for us in a trial to solve the problem of unemployment before it even exists, and to support the students to apply for their job fairs and get employed on their own, because the most difficult first 2 steps is writing a CV and not getting it from your friend or downloading it, and knowing how to pass an interview. And the second program is our job placement training program, which is our bread and butter. We target graduates from students and high institutes until the age of 30. He has to be unemployed or underemployed. We give them a training for a month as if they got a job. So they go every day from Sundays through Thursdays from 9 to 5:30, formally dressed with a suit and a tie, taking strong attendance every single lecture. So we simulate the labor market inside our classrooms, and we simulate the labor market in a component which is called company simulation. So our classrooms are like small companies where the students are divided into groups and they create their own company, give it a vision and a mission and a logo and an organization chart and everything. And this feeds in what you said, Mustafa, earlier, that one of the major skills that are really needed is teamwork. And we are very high on training teamwork. We train on emotional intelligence, time management, business skills, listening, communication skills, leadership, negotiation, all the needed skills right now. So this is why I'm very happy and proud to be on this panel, because this is what we do. And that's mainly it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Am I on time?
I'll let it pass. And now to Farah, please tell us more about the Arab Youth Center, what you do. Are you UAE focused? Are you regional focused? Let us know what you do.
Thank you, Rasha. It's an honor to be part of this panel and speak in front of you, Your Excellencies, and our amazing youth. Sorry, is it working? Can you hear me now?
Right, it's not fine now? I think it's working, right?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I would like to thank you all again for being part of this panel and speaking in front of Your Excellencies. It's an honor, and of the amazing youth present here. So let me start by giving everyone a brief introduction on the Arab Youth Center. It was established in 2017 by His Highness Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Presidential Affairs in the UAE. He is also the chairman of the Arab Youth Center, and it's vice chaired by Her Excellency Shama Al Mazroui, Minister of Youth in the UAE and the youngest minister in the world. What we do through the Arab Youth Center is create projects. Wait, sorry. I want to go a step back again. We found out and we believe that the prosperity and the success of the Arab world depends on the prosperity and success of its youth. If the youth are not happy, are not, engaged, are not getting the opportunities they want, the Arab world will not reach the place it should reach, hopefully, inshallah. And so we created projects, strategies, and initiatives that aim at developing youth, empowering them to become leaders of positive change in the Arab world, and their nations and countries, which in the long term will reflect on the Arab world as a whole. One of our main initiatives and leading initiatives is the Young Arab Media Leaders Program, where so by 2019, we have already 300 graduates from the program. Some of them are attending the session here. And I was so proud to see them here at the forum. So what we do is we gather 100 Arab youth every year from all over the MENA region, and we partner with leading organizations. We have partners such as the Thomson Reuters Foundation, CNN, Bloomberg, even Google News Initiative is part of our program, and local organizations or regional organizations such as NBC, Al Arabiya, and Sky News. And after they graduate from our program, we ensure that they receive opportunities or recognition back in their countries or within the UAEs. And we have many success stories that we are proud of. Even the youth that are here are part of these delegations because they became distinguished, not because of anything else. We also have initiatives that focus on entrepreneurship. We have the Startup Marketplace in Dubai, which we hold, and we gather also, 100 is our number. We gather 100 startups to connect with investors in Dubai, and so they can promote and showcase their startups and develop them further. And we also launched recently the Youth Pitches, which is a pitching competition that tackles in each round a specific challenge faced by the Arab youth. In the first round, they tackled the challenge of unemployment, and the youth who won was from Jordan, and he won $100,000 so he can expand this idea within the Arab world. It was a platform that provides jobs and incomes to the youth in Jordan, and now he's going to be able to expand it to Egypt and Syria and Palestine. Again, we also did, the youth pitches also tackled women in employment in Jordan and economic challenges in Bahrain, which we did in collaboration with the Ministry of Youth in Bahrain, thanks to His Excellency Ayman Muayyad. And each of these youth were given awards so they can expand their models and they can benefit from, not only in Bahrain, but in other countries surrounding them. So this is the Arab Youth Center. It is from the UAE, however, we focus on Arab youth as a whole, all the youth in the MENA region. All our initiatives are all-inclusive, and our goal is to empower Arab youth all over. And I want to tell all Arab youth here that our doors are open to hear their ideas and their suggestions, whatever they want, how they want us to empower them, and what opportunities they would like to see. We have a long way to go, but if we work hand in hand with youth, I think we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farah. We only have 10 minutes left, and I really want to give the opportunity to the audience to ask questions. So I'm going to ask you a very quick question, Mustafa. If you can answer in 1 minute, and this time I will stop you.
That's a fair challenge. Yeah, I take it. 1 minute. Yeah.
Okay, so in the study and in your presentation, you clearly distinguish between two types of education, global knowledge and vocational education. Some countries perform really well on the vocational side, and others perform really well on the global knowledge side. Do you think countries should have more of a homogeneous performance across both sides, or do you think it should be based or up to the countries to decide what their priorities are?
Look, I would classify myself as somebody who is in the mining industry, mining for talent. And while you're mining for talent, you are acting as an investor, so that's what we do. And while we are investing into the ecosystem, not necessarily just into startups, but into the ecosystem itself, what we do is we look at both talents in how they work together. So an area which is technologically so super advanced, but you can't deal with the people, what use is such an ecosystem? It's a bit troublesome. So the balance is very important. But what matters more is the development, that there's a continuous development of leadership within those ecosystems. And that means it's like a piston. So sometimes the vocational training and the technical skills override, and sometimes the more interpersonal skills override. And leadership is found in both. It's sort of like asking somebody the question, hey, do you want to be a generalist or you want to be a specific techie, yeah? And there is no real answer to that. That's for every person to really decide for themselves. But the ecosystem needs to be balanced, because some rainy day, your techies are going to save you. And we saw this happening, for example, during turmoil in Egypt, where, for example, some of the finance organizations that belong to the government were able to bring it technologically to the advancement to support and for remittances and for people who were already above their years of work. So they were able to support via tech. And so on the other side, also leadership development from an interpersonal skill perspective is extremely important and has a high psychological component to it that becomes very, very expensive to get the right type of coaches and people. So it's good to sort of like have a continuous of education between the people and not only rely on the Ministry of Education for education. There's education on lifelong education is even more important than the formal type of education. The formal education is kind of like somebody telling you, hey, hello to the world. But then you're shipped off and you need to find refuge for your own self to keep updating yourself and continuously improve. So a balance would be the shortest question. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we have, I think, 7 minutes. So we'd like to open it up for questions. Can someone help me with a microphone? Yes. The gentle. Thank you so much.
Hello. Okay. I think I'll just get up. Thank you very much for everything you've shared. It's a brilliant panel. I'm sorry. Yeah, my name is Joel Lutimba Lumala. I'm from Uganda. I have just a question for Ms. Alsid.
Noura Abu Saud.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I just want to ask, first of all, about you shared that you are partnering with businesses to get youth into these job situations. Since we're talking about the challenges, I'd like to ask, could you share more specifically on your experience with the businesses? Are they positive, or what exactly are they posing as challenges when you partner with them? Or are you finding that it's better to promote entrepreneurship? Or, are you balancing entrepreneurship and partnering with businesses? Yeah? And then also I'd just like to ask, EFE is doing brilliant work in the MENA region. Are you looking to expand to the rest of Africa? Because I know a lot of organizations down south that are doing this. And I think that you'd, find great partnerships with them. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for your questions. So I will take the second question to the global team and ask them if they are intending to open in other affiliates, but I'm sure that they are. Going back to your first question, definitely we have some entrepreneurship programs, but we mainly focus on job placement ones because from experience, this is the most successful ones, and the feedback that we get from employers is really very good. They simply come back again. So with the call centers, for example, in Egypt, we have a problem, especially with call centers who, and again, we're talking about the first entry jobs. We have a problem with the TH sound and the P sound and the B sound. And call centers, they have English accounts and offshore accounts. So the technical component that we invest and we tailor in our programs are mainly English. So the employer becomes very, very happy, and we save him a lot of time to find speakers who do that. Again, if the employer is like malls and it has to do with retail, so the technical component that we tailor in our programs is a retail component, because again, we are tailors of curricula. We have a basic basket of curricula, which is the basic skills in English and CV writing, and we have a technical component that we constantly add depending on the employer as well as the donor. So with Google, for example, the technical component is digital marketing, but with a well-known employer in Egypt who has opened a lot of malls, it's mainly retail and sales. So we focus on the employer's need and we tailor the curricula. So I think that the employers are happy and they come back again to us. Thank you so much for your questions.
This gentleman, oh, okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Noha from Egypt. I'm in the 4th year of college and I wanted to share something like an advice to everyone here and then ask the panelists a question. First of all, I can never forget speaking of the importance of the Ministry of Education and the importance of education. أنا عمري ما هنسى مدرسة أولى حضانة بتاعتي أستاذة نرمين.
I never forget my kindergarten teacher. She told me something that helped me develop in my country. If I have something to say, I have to grab the opportunity and say it. So for me, it's very important for the Egyptian education, like I've been taught in my school, is to teach me not only theoretical curricula and the technical aspects, but also the things that opens the doors for you, like the communication, relations, how to talk before people, and the skills. And this has let me work in many places even before I graduate. So it's very important for me to disseminate this all over the Egyptian education.
Positions وكان من advices مثلا اللي سمعتها من CEO of Google
sorry, this switching between Arabic and English can't work out. It's either Arabic or English. We can't translate this way. We can't interpret.
Lists today to share a skill with the youth so that we can focus on and work on for, let's say, the next year until the next World Youth Forum. Thank you very much.
Do you want to start, Mustafa? I think everyone should mention one skill that they would like to advise the youth on. So we can start from you.
I would say persistence, definitely. When you work in the policy world, being persistent is extremely important. Many people do have dreams and aspirations, but only if you make it, because only if you do have basically the stamina to stay and basically push for what they believe and what they want to do. So I would say persistence is very important.
Yes. Martin?
Being from Google, I need to say artificial intelligence. But I would say you don't have to have a PhD in artificial intelligence in order to work in the field of machine learning and the field of integrating digital skills into whatever you do. It's really just understanding enough about the journey that we're on and to look in ways in which you can participate in that journey. So informing yourselves about some of those new technologies that are coming down the pipe and seeing, you know, even if you're working in a social enterprise, you have a community project, you have a small business or want to start a small business that is not technology driven, all of those skills in the digital domain will be extremely useful for you to enhance what you're doing. So always look for those opportunities of where you could bring in some of these tools, and a lot of these tools are freely available on the internet. There's no cost associated with them, and see how you can apply them to something that you're passionate about and that you really want to do in your life.
Yeah, it's a hard question, Noha, because I'll take this from Martin. It's you know that no skill that fits all. You should focus on what you'd be good at. This needs a lot of work, a lot of knowledge. Reading, exploring. So and this will give us like a debate. What's the definition of the skill here? Is it a digital skill that we would like to teach the generations of acquiring in order to have a job, or it's only a behavior? I think your question is about the behavior. You need to stick like a behavior that will lead to you a job or a better life.
I want to share something that Google always encourages within the company. They always tell us find a job or do something that makes you uncomfortably excited. And really, this job for me, and I think Martin agrees, has been uncomfortably exciting every single day. And pushing ourselves outside our comfort zone is really what makes us grow as people. And I think that would be a great thing to have. Oh, yes, please.
Thank you very much. This has been really a great panel. I think what Noha was talking about was giving her the space to participate. And if we're going to talk about human skills, human intelligence, you need the space to venture into comprehending what's happening and expressing yourself and bearing the responsibility of your views. And this is one of the most difficult challenge that Egypt is facing because of the demographics and the huge classrooms. So the question is how to help children develop human intelligence. Because I'm afraid when we only teach them to use artificial intelligence, you always run the risk of the system breaking down. So we should not lose sight of the fact that we need to empower youth, and starting by children, to develop human skills and complement that with digital skills and artificial intelligence. Thank you.
This is the last question. Yeah, I know. This is the last question, so you're the...
Good afternoon. My name is Tinoda Moyo. I am from Zimbabwe. I've got a question directly to you, but all of you guys can feel free to answer. One of the things that I've learned about employability is not that someone is able to get a job, but it also includes the fact that the student or the graduate is able to maintain the job and stay at the job for some time. And many a times we find that people leave their jobs because they are not happy due to the fact that they feel like they've been stuck at the same position for so long. So I get employed today as an accountant. 5 years down the line, I'm still able to maintain my job, but I'm doing the same thing for 5 years at the same organization, which is the push that then I get that push to leave and look for a better opportunity because I'm not happy and also because I am not being developed. If I spend so many years at one job, there is no development there. So are you also looking into maybe training employers as opposed to just focusing on the employees? Would you consider also focusing on the employers when it comes to human capital development in terms of them identifying young talent that is coming to their organizations and then nurturing it so that people don't leave to go and look for other opportunities?
يعني if I may add يعني بعض الملاحظات كده أنا بس عاوز أقول للشباب.
If you leave me the floor to add some of the comments, so I need to stand up and confront all of you. I've been listening to your contributions. When I was back at school at the 60s, Egypt in the 60s, when asking about the skill, the required skill at that time, I've learned in government Egyptian schools. I was born to originally Egyptian families. They've instilled the values of the sense of exploration, curiosity, the desire to learn. This was my grandfather and my father as well. There was a new role for the parents, for the family itself, to instill within a baby, a child, the sense of joy when reading a book, when learning. This was the role to be assigned to the teachers, our great teachers in the 60s and 70s. I'm talking about an era without Google. These were not, there was terms that were not in our dictionary at that time. because it was the human capital, the teachers, they taught me how to do this, how to do that. It's the Egyptian school to whom I thank them for leading a happier life, because when I learned Egypt, that when I emerged, I was familiar with. Back at my PhD at the 70s in the USA, but it was about the computers at the time. There were no use of the processors. People were not familiar with that huge computers. I've made a PhD for this technology, and when this technology came to the front, I taught myself how to program and write codes. It was my interest. So the idea, the passion to learn, not to get a certificate, a mere certificate or a degree, when we reach the age of 20 or 30, the problem that we face, that it is the same system that produced prominent figures in Egypt was very much neglected for a long time, and we're trying to restore it to its original condition. People pay more attention to the mere marks, whether this is going to be included in the curricula. We're just exam oriented, not career oriented. Whether you're going to examine me in a certain subject, certain information, it might be useless for me, but I need to get rid of it. We're specialized people. We need to lead a happy life, and happiness would be only brought about by education, a life in which we learn. I've been there when there was the computer, the huge computers. I'm also very proud of that huge evolution technology. The first mobile phone was as large as my arm, and I bought it. I did not find anyone to talk to. It was very somehow disruptive technology. I was so much curious about that technology. I'm competing with Ahmed in the field of IT because I've studied mechatronics back at the college. But the capacity to learn and a passion to learn something that makes man happy and lead a happy life, but paying the most attention to the marks and that big quarrel about getting the best marks is the problem, is what matters. The baby is born with the intuition for learning, for exploration, that curiosity. When I prescribe them to do this and don't do this, the do's and don'ts, these are the restrictions. So that in the new educational system, we're not trying to learn them that innovation, but to make them balanced. People with balanced life, they need to ask, to learn, the passion to learn. They need to explore their identity. The ability to talk is closely related to intelligence. So neglecting a language, whether it's included in the overall GPA of a certain school degree, is the problem. The labor market needs people with skills, skilled people, not people do not recognize the importance of mere documents. I've been appointed and I've got a job in the USA not with my degree or the certificate, but for the skills that I'm well informed in the IT technology, because I've taught myself in the field of IT, and I've also formulated the necessary skills to qualify me this. I don't have a degree in IT, to tell you honestly. So did any one of you think that who invented that basic learning should be 12 years? Why not 8 years, 10 years? Who's the one with that concept? Who's the one who came up with this notion? Education is a lifelong process, a lifelong journey. It does not end when getting a degree. It's a lifelong journey. So the basic skill that we're acquiring is that we need to learn, continuous learning, and to also this should be under a clear-cut system. Let's look at the Japanese case. They work in a considerable amount of persistence and patience when learning. So the system that Ahmed was about to present to me was to educate the Egyptian student in how to make a decision, how to have a good, fine taste of music and art. If anyone can listen to that artistic joy, they need to taste it. They need to touch that beauty, that joy. And this project would not succeed if we do not place believe in that project, not just the government, but starting from the family, from the father and mother who give birth to that child, and the child himself or herself to be aware of this. They need to identify with themselves. We need them to make this, and the whole overall system. When we asked the Singaporean experts about their case, being the top countries in the field of education, we asked them about the period that took to be the leading country in the field of education. They told us that they have been 35 years to be the top-ranking country in education. In Egypt, were not even patient to wait for 6 months. The Singaporean people, they believed in that goal. They were very patient for their children to grow up. It's not a decision that lies in the hand of the government. It's a full process of complete change, starting from the family to the school. And the parents need to be aware that they, along with their children, will have many obstacles within this journey. Singapore, for instance, they have taken how many generations to make this school? Are you familiar with the number of schools in Egypt? Egypt has more than 55 schools in Egypt with 22 million students. Singapore has only 40 schools. Only 40 schools. For instance, in the district of Shobra, we have only 40, and they have taken 35 years to reform this educational system and have neglected for a long time the education system in Egypt. It's not a problem of funds, it's the problem of belief in the necessity of that we should not neglect our children, we should not leave them just like that. People who give birth to children, they should feel guilty that they are not furnishing them with the necessary skills and required skills, that they, after 20 or 22 years, they need to find a suitable job. That's a very new era that with its respective demands. I need to be prepared for what's coming. We need to teach them for the forthcoming future. It's not about the GPA or about the degree or anything else. It's about them. Thank you. Thank you, all of you.
شكرا معالي الوزير على هذه الكلمات المثيرة للخيال. سأقوم بتوصيلك بالنورة بعد أن ننتهي، وشكرا لكم أيها الحضور. كانت هذه المناقشة مناقشة رائعة. شكرا.